Okay, so chapter 28 in American Pageant is called Progressivism and the Republican Roosevelt, and it covers the years 1901 to 1912 in American history. And this era was an important era because it has these huge, broad, sweeping implications. 1901 to 1912 and 1901 to 1945, which is the whole unit, were time periods in American history that really settled America as a world power and established different national attitudes in terms of blacks and women and immigrants, and also changed the American identity. It evolved away from the frontier necessarily to a more settled industrial society. So the Progressive Era was totally important and interesting and had all of the typical political and economic and military things happening in it. But the thing that's really interesting to me about the Progressive Era is that it was the first era in which environmental conservation, preservation, and sustained use became prevalent. So this was an incredible sign that America was really maturing as a country and was settling into its identity in a way. Because a nation that's either racing towards industrialism or is fairly undeveloped doesn't have the luxury of thinking about environmentalism. So environmentalism is not only something that's amazing and preserves nature and bore national parks and the Sierra Club, it's also something that really established America as the first industrial nation that was so settled and so mature and so powerful that we had the luxury of thinking about being green, which is still something that we struggle with today, that the world is struggling with. So when we had things like the Desert Land Act and the Forest Reserve Act and the Sierra Club being founded in 1892, these are huge important things because they're all so relevant today. And the Sierra Club has been battling and saving land and preserving land since 1892. It's still relevant in modern America, as are national parks, which are America's greatest idea, in my opinion. We were the first nation to really say, like, let's look at this incredible, incomparable landmass that we own and save some of it for the enjoyment of the public. Because the outdoors, the frontier, is part of the American identity. So preserving it in the Progressive Era was an incredible move, in my opinion, for the modern society that we have. Um, Also, what's interesting is that this movement of environmentalism wasn't just Teddy Roosevelt, who loved the outdoors. He was a rancher, he was a hunter, he enjoyed being outside. So it's natural for him to say, hey, like, let's not cut down all the trees. It was an economically sound idea to preserve and conserve land, and it was almost affecting everybody in a way. I mean, this is when the Boy Scouts of America were founded during the Progressive Era, and it became like the largest youth organization in the country, which is still so relevant today. The Boy Scouts are huge, and it's a mark of respect and a mark that you're a young man of great character, and that started because of America's national thought that nature mattered, which is good because it does. And the economic part of it is that when Teddy Roosevelt started focusing on sustained agriculture, sustainable logging, sustainable anything, that's not only going to preserve the land and keep the land healthier, but it fed industrialism for the long term. So this was an industrial society that was looking towards natural, untapped resources and thinking in the long term, which was so beneficial and so great, and is why in a lot of ways we have the land we have today. It's not exhausted, it's not all dry, and eroded, and that's because of the movements made in the Progressive Era in terms of the environment. So that's what I find most important and most striking, because this is one of the biggest global issues, is how to sustain our globe. And I'm very proud to say that we are all members of a nation that were among the first to focus on preserving the environment.